Welcome, everyone. This is a special webinar from InterimExecs, getting your house in order, how to get your company ready for sale. We're glad to be addressing this topic. We're approaching a new year. We could hit it at any point in the year because it's a considered process, but now is a particularly perfect time. So you're in the right place. If you are the owner or founder of a company, you worked hard to get where you are, and now there may be some other considerations coming into place, which could be driving a decision for some kind of sale or recapitalization or exit. You're in the right place if there is a motivation to sell, you're thinking about it, you're not sure where to start, you're not sure of how the process is going to go, what it is that's going to make for a very successful outcome for you and your shareholders and your stakeholders. We also think there has to be a willingness here to improve. We tend to get set in our ways. We own companies. We're at InterimExecs, we're shareholders in a bunch of different businesses. And when something is working right, it can be that it becomes just a step and repeat. And yet, we're in a time where there is so much change. And in particular, even the ways in which people sell companies has changed over time. And so it's good you're here. We're doing a blitz on this. This is going to be a fast 15, 20-minute exploration of how to get to a better exit. So our agenda, we're going to look at signs that it may be time to sell. We're going to talk about questions buyers ask. We're going to talk about how to prep your company for maximum value when you do decide to exit. This is an endless topic. You can go to day-long presentations. You could study this for years. This, of course, is the specialty of investment bankers in terms of being exit here, and many private equity funds that really want to be in the owner's corner. We're doing a quick hit here to get your juices going, and we're going to keep on talking about this in more specialized aspect. This is really meant to be a bit of an overview. So here we go. Oh, sorry. First, a little background on myself. My name is Bob Jordan. I'm recording this here in Chicago, Sweet Home Chicago. I've been at this over 25 years in terms of helping owners build their companies and exit. I've been in 3 IPOs. I was the lead person, the lead strategist, corp dev, board member, interim executive, and multiple exits to strategic buyers at very high multiples. And that's what led us to form InterimExecs, which is now an organization operating around the world. We've had about 8,000 executives show up on our proverbial doorstep. About a decade ago, we developed a concept we call RED Team. RED stands for Rapid Executive Deployment. A little more on that later. But that's where this mindset comes from, is because we have worked with many company owners and boards. And in particular, there's an impetus that people tend to show up when there is a transaction. Either something just happened, or in many cases, owners and boards are trying to get ready and do that in the best way possible. I've also authored a couple books. My partner in InterimExecs is also co-author, Olivia Wagner, in a book that was published last year called Right Leader, Right Time: Discover Your Leadership Style for Winning Career and Company. Okay, let's dive in more. So, there's always the thing for us owners, what keeps you up at night? Is it more freedom? Is this optimized? Is your business firing on all cylinders? When is it that might be the right time to exit? Is there somebody else who should be taking over? Is there a next generation there? It could be family. It could be that there are younger leaders, capable leaders to step in or not. You're wondering what's happening, what will happen to the company. This is your blood, sweat, and tears. This is sacred. The signs that it may be time to sell, the biggest one is personal considerations, because if you are the majority owner of this business, you have your reasons and your motivations, whatever they are, and that's great. What you want because you want it, as Dan Sullivan says. And that's a wonderful motivation to have. for whatever that is, for your family or for yourself. It could be it's the best way to continue and to grow is that there should be a new owner and majority, or that it could be you're taking a minority, you're allowing someone else a minority position into your business or a larger minority position. This is one of the big changes. Most private equity funds used to be completely control oriented, meaning they were buying 100% or 80% or 51%. Far more funds now are willing to take a minority position because there is such a search for good assets. There's a calculation you probably made or would be making that on balance, it is better to be the seller than the acquirer. It could be that there are other forms of liquidity that are not as desirable to you in terms of ongoing distributions of profits, or an IPO, which is mostly not a practical reality for most businesses. Number of businesses are ESOPs or employee owned, but again, that is its own particular specialized thing. I think one of the biggest things for us as owners of companies is you're listening to the market. The market is probably talking to you. In this day and age, there is so much social media and noise around us that there could be signal getting through to you that is saying you need to be paying attention here on a macro level, not just within your business. So we're going to talk about how to achieve successful outcomes. A couple of pointers up front. The process is always longer than you think. It's just a reality. Diligence on company sales has become even more labored than it used to be. Another thing which is a truism, there are not enough assets in the world for the amount of cash which is sloshing around in the markets. That's good for sellers. If you've built anything that has value meaning that it has a sustainability to generate profits or has assets that have value in the marketplace, you're in good shape because there is more cash circulating in the world so far. That is going to change over time because we'll talk about the baby boomers a little bit. The baby boomers are the largest demographic cohort in US history. And so there's this historic transfer of wealth that is ongoing here, but it has been underway. And so over time, we're going to see less cash in the marketplace. So a question here, which is, what if I'm looking to sell, but another family member shareholder does not want to? That is its own issue, which actually is going to play in a little further on in this presentation, because one of the biggest takeaways I'd like you to all have from this is you need to field a full team here when you go to market. You should never do this alone. I hope no one is, that would be like the surgeon operating on himself, the lawyer representing himself. But there is now this full team concept you have to take advantage of, and that would include if there is any kind of shareholder or family conflict. I'm going to tell you another truism that in public companies, that we're talking mostly about exiting as private companies, even if you're selling to a public. I've been on a number of boards, been involved in successful sales of private companies, and there's a saying among board members, which is companies are bought, they are not sold. Now, don't hear from that you don't hire an investment banker, you don't go to market. Yes, you do in an organized process, but it tends to be, maybe it's just a personal observation, but I've seen this time and again, it tends to be for private businesses, the lower middle market especially, is that when it works, there's one really great combination. There's one great buyer. There's one great partner that is out there. It's not to say you shouldn't run a full process, but check it out and you tell me as you go through if you do not find that kind of successful outcome. So how do we go about prepping for sale, preparing your company? There are some questions that buyers are going to be asking. The first is what do your financials look like? I mean, I'm summarizing what 50 questions all amount to, which is, I don't care who the private equity fund is, the first thing that's on their minds is, what are the earnings here? Because what drives private equity is valuation based on EBITDA. nobody even really says earnings. It's always earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. This is what they have on their brains, and this is going to drive some of the advice you're about to hear. I mean, give you a little spoiler alert, which is, if you are going to go to market, you better be thinking about quality of earnings reports. There's a question, which is, do I need a formal valuation prior to sale? Personal opinion, not a fan. The reason is because when you hire an investment banker, this is part of what their process is in any event to go through this. That is first and foremost. You're going to come to some kind of understanding of what the exit could look like. Most great investment bankers will not take on an initiative, a client, if the expectations of value are wildly off from what the banker thinks they are. Formal valuation firms do all kinds of great work. It can be part of the sale price. It plays a whole lot more in things, I think, like formation of ESOPs and valuations in closely held family businesses for getting out, and for options exercises. But I would say first, look to the investment banker. So much of valuation of companies is based on earnings. And if it is not based on the power of earnings, it's based on the power of the assets. What are the assets that you have built here? What are those hard assets in plant and equipment and land? What are the soft assets? What is the intellectual property that you hold? What are the metrics? What is the pipeline? What's the technology? What's your team look like and your partnerships? All of these things are valuable for businesses, and more so, of course, because we all know, I think there was a metric that like 20 years ago, 85% of the Fortune 500, if you looked at valuation, was based on hard assets. And if you look now, 85% is based on intellectual property and software and things that have nothing to do with the actual manufacture of goods. So between your earnings and your assets, this is obviously the focus for private equity funds and strategic buyers. What are those buyers looking at? They're looking where the opportunities are for growth. You're going to be successful to the extent that the buyer of your sacred assets, of what you've grown, has a vision beyond you. I mean, unless you're sticking around for a huge amount of time, they have to have that vision that they're capturing more operational efficiencies, they're expanding into new markets. Especially if it's private equity, they will be the driver. If you're the platform company, new platform for them, you're going to be your platform is now the driver for M&A, for merger and acquisitions, and for adding on bolt-ons and add-ons to what you've done, for growing sales, for streamlining, for incorporating AI, which is coming into most everything. Certainly for upgrading financial performance. And of course, then we get into this whole kind of blue ocean thinking, which is, how are you perhaps dramatically, or how is the buyer perhaps dramatically altering a market which moves beyond competition? Blue Ocean, of course, is a famous book, and there are great examples like Southwest Airlines, which in a way didn't take on any other airlines when they launched. They took on the car. They were not a hub and spoke operation. And so the whole thinking was, could they be competitive with someone thinking of driving? Be that instead Cirque du Soleil, real blue ocean thinking there. So what are you going to do? Should I stay or should I go? It's a question you have to wrestle with. How long you're going to be sticking around if you are exiting? Is there a next generation that you are training? If you're staying, or how much are you a part of training and nurturing new management? Is your current team robust enough? What kind of empowering resources can you bring in? Final point, pretty obvious. What's your number? You know that your top of the market number is the buyer's bargain. And there's nothing wrong with that. When we own public company stocks, this is pretty easy. Let's say you own shares in IBM. Well, you decide one day you're going to sell your shares in IBM. And the way you're able to do that is there's someone at the opposite end of that transaction. Your top end price, their starting price. Yeah, and I'm putting aside, tax considerations when you need to get out, but you get the point, right? You can have good reasons for whatever number it is that you want, however you value your business, and understand that there is a motivation. There must be a motivation on the buyer's side, which is somehow they're getting something that they're going to make even bigger and even better. We live in a world of robust private equity. Private equity drives a lot of this thinking, and so the world is awash in cash in this overhang of funds unspent, not even including competitors known as strategic buyers, seeking assets, seeking platforms, seeking add-ons. Everything you can do right now before you go to market to best position your company and your assets is going to translate into a higher valuation. Even if you don't sell the private equity, the same discipline applies. Say it one more time. Everything you can do right now to prep is going to translate into higher valuation. So what specifically do we mean? And this is getting into readiness. By the way, I love this quote from Vince Lombardi. Everyone thinks famous football coach Lombardi, he said, winning is everything. He didn't say that. What he actually said is the will to win is not nearly so important as the will to prepare to win. And that's what we're going to be doing here. This primer is to prepare to win. And I'm going to take one aspect of this here today, which is you should feel the full team. Think of this like you're the coach or the owner of a baseball team. You go out on the field, you're going with a full team. You're going with 9 players. Don't go out on the field with half a team. Doesn't make sense, does it? And yet, every day, lower middle market companies, even middle market companies may go to market or may start thinking of process. And they're not taking advantage of all of the resources that are around them. Your accounting firm needs to be up to speed. Your law firm needs to be up to speed. You have to have a wealth manager if this is an individual owner or a small group of owners, because there are considerations you need to take into account in advance. You, of course, are going to have an investment banker, or if you were thinking of not, get a good investment banker and allow them plenty of time for their own diligence up front. One final point here on this, which is somewhat new to the world. There didn't used to be this thing called a quality of earnings report. And then there was that thing, which was verification of that your finances are what you say they are. Got it? Well, this is where the world has gone now, which is your company, you, the seller, you need to do the quality of earnings report before you go to market. You want your QOE before the buyer is in there, because there is still interpretation of exactly what it is that makes up your earnings, what may impair it, what may improve it. And you need to be fully armed and dangerous before you go to market. You want one takeaway from this, other than I'm going to put in a plug for InterimExecs Red Team, go do a QOE before you formally go to market. I think you'll hear from any investment banker that is around you or from your accounting firm that they're going to be wholeheartedly in favor. Okay, now here comes the plug, because what is now also available to you is on-demand leadership. We have seen this. This is not something we dreamed up. Owners of companies and boards started showing up and saying that they wanted help. They needed to maximize what they have before formally going to market. So to give you an example, it could be in your company that your children, your grandchildren, there is a next generation is going to step in and they're not yet fully up to speed. That is a great use case for what is an interim or fractional CFO, COO, even CEO, to go prepare the team. It is a mentorship role, but I call it a player coach role, which is to say that the distinction of interim and fractional contract and project-based executives is decision makers. It is not just a consulting role. It's not just delivering a report. It is somebody going out onto the field on your behalf who is taking responsibility, who is being held to account for decisions. And we think that is a great recipe for training next generation of leadership and owners. And those could be blood relation family, and it could be that you've got a younger management team and not everybody is yet fully ready to take the reins. The advantage, which has become so prevalent now around the world to interim and fractional, is that you're not taking on new employees. You do not have more burden in terms of benefits and severance or long-term contracts. It's completely a focus on results. This is going to be a drive to maximize what you've got, and you are not adding to your permanent overhead. That's an important thing when you go to market, because whatever your expense was on this becomes, as they say, an owner add back. So what we specialize in, InterimExecs Red Team, Red stands for Rapid Executive Deployment, and it is all of those advantages that we were just talking about in terms of ability to put in expert, veteran people at the C-suite level that can have a title, CFO, COO, CIO, all of that, and will take on the big challenges that you may have to make sure that you maximize your results. Why is that important? Well, as you learn, for example, when you do a QOE, a quality of earnings report, you know, your business, if you're doing pretty good these days, you could be looking at 10 times EBITDA as an exit. So if you're at 3 million in earnings, if you're at 7, if you're at 10, and there was a way through some resources to bump up by 1 or 2 million, you're looking at 10 times the effect in your exit, in valuation, by taking care of that challenge, by that getting that boost now and not waiting. Don't just give that to the buyer. Thanks very much. How many minutes do we take on that blitz? Have a question here before we go. Will the interim or fractional executive stay with the company after the sale? It's a great question. That is a maybe. It depends upon what is in your best interest and for the buyer as well. That resource, what we tend to see is the answer is absolutely yes, if it makes sense. These kinds of resources, interim executives, serve at the pleasure of the company. And so, especially in transition and in integration work, we do all kinds of work, both pre-transaction in terms of getting ready, prepping for that exit, and then in going through those negotiations and through due diligence to make sure your deal finishes cleanly and on time. And then, of course, there becomes integration, especially if it's with a larger organization or with a platform company, private equity fund. And so it could easily be that interim will stick around for a while to make sure everything transitions well. Question, what are the best ways to decide areas to focus on improvement now versus selling? We're fans of a concept of operational roadmap. Bringing in an expert executive, one of the great use cases is essentially an audit. It is to look across the organization, across operations, finance, marketing, go-to-market, product mix, every strategic aspect of that business to figure out the strongest points and points where you could have some really high point of leverage, where there could be like a 3-month project that's going to have some significant effect on increasing earnings. All right. Thank you all very much. If we can help any further, we're happy to do some brainstorming with you. My email is bob@interimexecs.com, and we wish you the best. Thank you.